All right, so Elena of Vegalicious, welcome to Raw and Cooked Vegan.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. So if you could, Elena, just set us up a little bit by telling us how you were raised. Was your family at all dietarily conscious? Were they into fitness at all? Tell us a little bit about your growing up.
Most certainly. So I was born overseas in Kyrgyzstan. And unlike Americans, we didn't have the luxury to think about diet or careers or anything. It was a place where you survived and you made life happen and you ate what's available. And like most developing societies and most societies where the agriculture has not been so subsidized that there's so much processed junk, we ate primarily what we grew on our land. And we did consume animal products, so dairy, eggs, meat, but those were condiments on our plate. So you get meat products, and they're like a big treat on a holiday. And during the week, you get, I grew up youngest out of 14, so large family.
Wow, yeah.
So it's not like in America, you basically run out of money raising kids, right? So my boss,
right.
my mother was a business owner, and still, you get the whole chicken for the whole family for the whole week. And so she put it in soups, and also there was flavor of animal food, but there was not too much of it. So all of us were healthy and slim until we came to America. And then when it came to fitness, not everybody owns cars even now overseas or own a car. Back then it was a luxury item. So by the time you walk like a mile or two to your bus stop and you take a bus elsewhere, then you walk another few miles, you ended up walking on average like 10 miles a day at least. So everybody was in tip-top shape without having to go to the gym. There were no gyms except in schools we had gymnasiums for, the regular PE classes.
Outside let me ask you, is a lot of Kurdistan mountainous? So are you kind of at high elevations?
No, Kyrgyzstan.
Kyrgyzstan. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, Kyrgyzstan.
Gotcha.
It had a valley and had mountains. You have your mountains, that snow-capped mountains. So where the population lived was in a valley. So it was kind of flat in the middle, but then you have your mountains in the background. Gorgeous, gorgeous place.
Gotcha.
But yeah, we didn't have to climb mountains by any means.
All right, so that's very interesting. So you had a relatively healthy diet since everything's natural coming from the ground. Some dairy and meat, but not excessive quantities. You come over to the United States, it's fast food heaven, a lot of fried junk, processed foods. What happened? Did you start eating a lot of American foods, or did you kind of maintain your old traditional diet?
So we, for the most part, we maintained the diet. However, here's what happens. The luxury items, just like in any country, if you look in the history of humanity, the poor were the healthy ones, the rich people were the ones who were obese, overweight, and having the heart attacks and strokes and everything else. The poor had diseases of deficiencies, and the rich had diseases of excess of nutrition, right? Well, that's what happens in America. We came here, and now the flour is all processed. There's a lot of dairy. There was access all of a sudden to our luxury items. So in Kyrgyzstan, we had a lot of animal foods maybe on holidays, whereas here was, you can go and get it. It's affordable. You can go get it. It's all subsidized. So if it were not subsidized, it would be expensive, right? Yeah. So you go and get all of those items, and now it becomes a part of your daily diet. So daily dairy and butters and oils and everything that's processed that was more expensive overseas, all of a sudden becomes a part of your daily diet because it's just simply affordable.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. So we didn't go eat fast food at all. We still cooked our own meals and all, but all of a sudden, the luxury items that we had on occasion or in small amounts became a big part of our diet. So we're shifting from, for example, 10 to 50%. That's a huge difference.
Yeah.
So immediately there was a change in how we looked, how we felt. The weight gain started to happen to a lot of my family members. I was still too young for that at that point. But, when you get older and if you don't move as much and your metabolism is different, it just, all of a sudden, we all became a little bit more round.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Okay, so what happened? I guess then for you, did you start to think, okay, I'm getting a little bit overweight. I'm losing some of the health I had. Did you start to explore fitness and diet? What were the first things that made you to start looking at these things more objectively?
So for me, that didn't happen for a long time. Here's what happened for me. I'm a very high energy driven individual. I think if I went to school, I was working 2 jobs on the side. I was volunteering. I was doing everything else. So eventually I went to college, actually away from my family in the state of Ohio. And I was a full-time student. I had a full-time job. And then I was volunteering almost like full-time.
Wow.
And then I met my husband-to-be. So we're just starting to date. And then he ended up in the hospital with a tumor on his brain, cyst. And so I became also his primary caregiver at the same time. So I was averaging like 3-4 hours of sleep maybe a day for at least a month and a half because I was commuting to the hospital, taking care of him, his finances, whatever else.
Yeah.
And in addition to doing all the other things. So stress started to wear me down. And all of a sudden, my very slim, healthy body, I began to gain weight. I went to, and so I got to a point that my body, I stopped menstruating from stress. So I would have like occasional sporadic, so my hormones got out of balance. I went to my doctor and my doctor said, well, let's put you on birth control. I'm like, I don't want to go on birth control. I'm not, I'm not married, not having babies. And my husband and I were abstinent before marriage. So it was not like I had to worry about pregnancy, right?
Wow.
No, this is the way to regulate it. And I was just not well educated on the topic. And that is the only mistake that I really regret in my life because it screwed me over. Because I got on birth control and immediately I began to gain weight.
To gain weight, okay.
Gain weight. So I went from 120, 25-pound frame to I was almost 150 some by the time I got married. So it was compound of not enough rest. My diet was okay. I still cooked all of my foods, but there was some animal foods. I was still a student, so it's not like I could afford a lot of luxury foods either. But it was stress, medication, and just not really tending to myself as much as I tended to everything else in my life.
Wow.
So
can I ask you, Elena, what happened to your husband? Did he survive? Did he come through it?
He survived, and he's sticking around just fine, and we had a baby, and yeah.
Okay, good.
I nursed him to health. He ended up having a cyst removed from his brain, and then he had an infection twice. So he ended up with like 3 brain surgeries instead of 1. And we got married a year after the surgery, on the day of the surgery, to celebrate life. And
wow, that's beautiful.
We've
been
married now for 13 years.
Congratulations, that's wonderful. And looking back on that now, do you think that perhaps this cancerous tumor was related to what he was eating?
He actually didn't have cancer, so it was benign.
Okay.
It was cyst. And so with that, there's no way, we thought about it even at that point, and later we were trying to figure out what happened. The truth is there was no way to know what caused it.
Okay.
So it was basically like a skin pocket that got filled with the fluid of the brain.
Gotcha.
And it really caused excruciating headaches, pains, and we were happy that he survived the process.
Okay.
So it was a miracle too.
Well, yeah, and that's so cool. You guys celebrated a year afterwards your marriage. That's beautiful. All right, now, so you took these. They gave you these hormones, and I'm glad you bring this up because they kind of give out birth control pills like candy. I know that. I mean, in some ways, I think it's great that it maybe can give women more freedom, but it often seems like they just don't even address the possible side effects of this. So,
well, that's the thing. And even the insert of the birth control you read, but it doesn't tell you everything.
Yeah.
There are some things that, so eventually, here's what happens. Here's how bad my life gets screwed up because of birth control. So I'm going to digress just for a moment because you said it gives freedoms. Here's what it does. We think it gives us freedoms, but it gives us more bondage. Now, I'm not against family planning by any means, so I have to insert that.
Yeah.
Here's what it does. It puts the sole responsibility of family planning on the shoulder of the woman.
Uh-huh.
The man just comes to the party is over, and it's up to the girl to decide, hey, we're having this baby, or whatever we're doing. Then the birth control, it hijacks the hormones of a woman, so no longer is she sexually as viable and is turned on as her counterpart because she is now in constant winter of her body because you feel like premenstrual all the time. When you're premenstrual, you don't feel like being intimate. And so the woman goes sometimes through her life like sleepwalking sexually because she doesn't get to explore her sexuality because the hormones are so overwhelming that what could have been pleasurable and fun is like, I'm not having a baby. That
is very interesting, Elena. Very interesting.
It doesn't give that freedom to the woman, and then you feel alone on this journey. And I'm not an emotional person, but I could get emotional. My husband and I are very emotionally connected, so we talk through everything. And he's like, "How can I help you?" We didn't know, so eventually we found an organization that had natural family planning, to where we know your fertility cycle as a woman. They teach you. Then they help the husband to get involved in the process, so he's no longer just a party boy, but he is an equal partner and participant in fertility planning. So when he approaches a woman and says, wife, partner, he says, "Are you fertile today?" And if she says, "Yeah, we're possibly getting pregnant," no longer he says, "Okay, let's take a risk, let's have a party, let's whatever." He knows if they do something, there will be a baby. So he says, "You know what? We'll cuddle, we'll talk, we'll be emotionally close, we'll postpone our other intimacy, sexual intimacy until later." And all of a sudden, she no longer feels alone. We were much more connected at that point.
I love this you're bringing up, Elena, and it also, you don't necessarily have to have intercourse. There's other ways you can do things, and I really love you bringing this up. With my ex-wife of 14 years, we practiced this. There's a great book. It's called The Personal Fertility Guide by Terry Pittner-Guay. I don't know if it's any longer in publication, but I know there are other organizations, other publications. You can very easily do this. You don't have to take medicine. You can do it naturally. So, yeah.
But here's the best part. The efficacy of this method surpasses the efficacy of a birth control pill or a condom.
Very interesting.
If you do it right, plus you're not risking hormone imbalances. I developed hypothyroidism and a pituitary abnormality after going on birth control. You're not going to risk any of that. The only thing you're risking is being patient. And now it will behoove all of the women to help. I hate to use this term, but to train their partners, to help their partners understand that patience and self-control is a good thing to practice in a marriage or in a relationship, because then you are more in tune with the person as opposed to just their body.
I totally agree with you, Elena, and it's kind of striking that you have to actually say that, but this society is so revved up and so, I want right now. It's almost jarring to the ears to have somebody say, patience. There's something valuable to a little bit of patience.
Right. And again, so when we go through this fertility process, if there are going to be any women or men listening to this broadcast, it's a matter of like a week of abstinence.
Yeah.
And the rest of the 3 weeks, go happy, make like bunnies and have fun. Nobody cares, right? But it's the freedom to understand it's not hard. So the initial process of learning will take you about a month to figure out. And I've had a lot of young ladies since then how to learn your body. Now, there's also a German-invented device that I actually have. I use it at home as a fertility tracker, where every morning you wake up, you measure your temperature, it compares your results with 100,000 or a million other women, and it tells you whether it's safe or not to have an intercourse. So it actually takes it a step further. It costs like $400, but it's compared. I used to spend $40 on birth control drugs every single month. It paid itself back within a year, and it's good for like up to 10 years. So it was an investment.
That's great. I did it with my ex-wife just pretty much on the mucus. We didn't even do temperature, so just on the mucus, and it worked for 14 years. So
that's the thing. It's as good as anything. And the flip side of it, what's good for the same method that we try to avoid a pregnancy is the same method we can use to achieve a pregnancy, because now you know your most fertile days. It's like, okay, let's hold off for 2 to 3 weeks, and now let's go, and then have a baby.
I love it. The only caveat I would say is that I think there are some occasions, for example, when a woman is first starting to have her period, and also when a woman is starting to go through menopause, where the fluctuations become a bit irregular and are not as easily predictable. But otherwise...
we're frank here, we're adults. Use condoms at that time, and double up on them, whatever. But what I'm saying is, a woman has been for now several decades put in a place that she's the sole guard of fertility. Yes. It's a lonely place. It's a difficult place to be. I've been there, and my partner and I, we just didn't know better. So my husband is my partner, and when we learned about this, he's like, "Baby, let's do this." And a lot of them out there, It's not because they don't know. It's not because they're not compassionate. It's not because they're ignorant or because they're dogs. It's just because they're not educated.
Yeah, it's such a great point, Elena. I'll share a story with you. I was dating someone prior to getting married, and I already knew about this approach. And she thought she was just going to have to take birth control pills. And I told her about this, and she it really touched her that, you know, I don't want to take hormones personally. Why would I want the woman to? So yeah, I think it's great what you're saying. You gotta consider the health first. Yeah.
Right. Well, and so they go just for a second about men. So men, and I come from a more like a male macho society. Russians are more that way. And you mentioned a vasectomy to Russian men, and like they're covering their private parts, like nobody's touching me. But nobody ever thinks about the woman going through getting her tubes tied or getting, my goodness, any kind of birth control. I've tried 3 different birth controls, and one of them almost killed me. Nobody thinks about us that way. It's like, oh, you just go, you take care of it. And I actually heard them say that. Well, what makes you think that your body is a better sanctuary than mine? Yours is worth more of respect. So I personally, our decision, I don't want my husband to get a vasectomy to avoid having children, because I think he should be able to express his sexuality all the way with me, right? He respects me the same way. He will not say, okay, go you get your tubes tied so we're not going to get pregnant, because there's still risk of, when you get your tubes tied, you get hormone imbalances. You might get ectopic pregnancy. All of those things that can happen puts you in danger of even death. Well, getting your voice snipped, that's not even more fun for a guy, because that also interferes with hormone production. Yeah. So if we approach it in a way that I respect your body as much as you respect mine and vice versa, I think that the only way we can go is this way, because then we work together to say, okay, we're equal partners in family planning. We're equal partners in having fun. And when the time comes to have fun, because we respect each other so much, it's going to be, to me, it heightens the intimacy, because you know this person fully respects you. So in a sense, we worship each other's sexuality because we respect it so much.
Beautiful. I love that, Elena. Beautiful sentiment. Let me take this back a little bit to our original discussion, and thank you for digressing, because I think it's a huge topic, and it needs to be broadcast from the rooftops. So thank you. So maybe a way to segue back into our conversations while we're in this area is some of the benefits I've heard people say about going vegan is that it has enhanced their sexual life, and in many ways. So I don't know, has that been the case for you?
Well, let me get to that.
Without getting too personal,
You know, when it comes to health, and the reason I started doing what I'm doing now, I said, if I can help one person prevent the hell that I've been through, I will do it no matter what it takes. And being honest and frank is not too much. And my husband has given me, permission to whatever point we need to help people. And by permission, I mean about our private life. It's not like, I need permission to work.
Right.
But so nevertheless, we didn't have a problem on that front beforehand. And we were still young. He was still in his 20s when we got married. I was in my late 20s. I'm a couple of years older than my husband. And but I work with people where we don't need to give them a blue pill. What we need to do is take away the dairy and the steak. And all of a sudden, excuse my language, I don't know if it makes you feel uncomfortable, they can still do just fine. But it's the blockage. So if you think about an erection for men, it's about blood flow. It's about being able to pump blood to the right body parts. When your arteries are clogged, when you're sluggish, there's no way your blood is just not moving. So when we go to a whole foods plant-based diet, your body cleans out, we detox you, your blood's flowing better, your arteries are more open. So there's no problem with, there's several maybe cases here and there where there's something wrong with the body, but not because of diet. So we deal with that separately. That's when you need medication. But 99% of the time for men, all they have to do is remove the offenders from their diet, and then they can perform and enjoy their sexuality just fine without any medication. So absolutely, that's been the case.
That's huge. And also, it's probably not as pronounced because it's not so obvious, but I imagine both for the man and the woman, when you clean out the arteries, you have better sensation throughout the whole body.
Absolutely.
So, it's going to make everything more heightened.
Yeah, and you also, when we go whole foods plant-based, especially if you exercise, you become more aware of your body. And when you're more in tune with your body, you know what to do to experience, life's pleasures a certain way. When your body is so if we imagine of this radio wave and broadcast, if there's beautiful stereo sound, everybody's enjoying it, right? But if you have interferences and static noise from other places, it's hard to enjoy the broadcast. Well, same happens with our body. What we do is we clear out all those interferences that get between us and being in tune with our body. We clear it out, and this, stereo broadcast is going on. We can enjoy everything much better. The senses are much better. You can taste foods much better. The life is better. Energy is better. You're more rested. You're more sexual if it comes to sexuality. So it's an all-around answer, except, of course, when it comes to spiritual, emotional things, that's where we deal with that. But food is responsible for a lot of things. Yeah. So when I work with people, I usually, when we start working, we keep a food journal, and we also keep an emotional journal next to it. What I found out is when I worked with people who are into religious people, they'll say, okay, all of a sudden I feel like I'm hearing better from God, right? And they'll write down their revelations. And when I work with people who are not religious, they'll say, I have this heightened feeling about who I am. I'm more aware of my emotions and how to deal with them. So for me, it's all spirituality. So whether it's religious or non-religious, it's a spiritual experience. But that is always, always, always what we experience is people go through an emotional detox almost at the same time as they're going through their physical detox.
Yeah, excellent point. I love that point. One that will benefit you whether you have deeply held religious beliefs or you're an atheist. Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Love that.
Yeah, because, well, at the end of the day, atheist or religious person, we're all spiritual beings, and we deal with our spirituality in a different way.
Thank you. Love it. Love it. Let me ask you, Elena, just a little bit. Can you adjust your camera so I can just see the top of your head just a little bit more?
Sure.
Just a tiny bit.
There we go.
Hey, that's perfect. That's perfect. Okay. So, Elena, let me ask you. You were taking these. They had convinced you prior to your doing some studies that, hey, take these birth control pills. You started taking them. They screwed up your whole system. And that in conjunction with this westernized diet, which was higher in fat and animal products, all these things, and the stress and strain of doing all these jobs and caring for your husband took its toll. It sounds like you reached a point where you started saying, I'm going to look into these things myself and see what I'm going to do. So when this happened, what kind of spurred this shift, and what did you first do?
So what happened is, my husband goes through a brain surgery, and after having infections, they put him on steroids just to battle the infection with his brain. And he goes from 170 frame within 1 month to 220 pounds because your body on steroids just starts gaining weight. And after the surgery, because his brain skull was drilled into, he cannot work out for like 2 years because he has to regrow the skull. So now I have a husband who's ballooned in size, and we're just married. And now he's having to have chronic chest pains. So basically angina. And I get to a point, so he was raised in an adopted family. We didn't know much about his medical history. And at that time, I'm still thinking, genetics has something to do with it. So we get hardcore faces to the ground looking for his biological family, and we sure find him. So it took us about a year or so to find him. And on his mother's side, there were strokes as young as his grandmother had a stroke at the age of 13. On his father's side, there were heart attacks, strokes, seizures, and a lot of deaths and cancers. And
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Saying, dude, if this is your genealogy, we have to do something to battle it.
Can I ask you, Elena, were his ancestors primarily city dwelling, or I'm assuming he's also from the same area you were, and were they country folks?
No, they were, South Carolina, more on the outskirts, so they're not big city dwellers.
Oh, okay.
But they were not growing their own food either. So
he's American. He's American.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He's African American, Native American. He's a compilation of a lot of things.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm from overseas. He just ended up having a Russian name for some weird reason, sign for me. But he's African American.
Okay, gotcha.
And so when we found them, and I said, if this is what it is, we need to start taking care of our diet. So I went, instead of your regular bacon, I'd get turkey bacon and other things. So I cleaned up the diet. We don't go out to eat and make all of our own food, but he's still having chest pains and all of that's going on. So we eventually go see a doctor. So by then his skull is grown back in, and he's slowly beginning to exercise. And we dropped some weight together, and the doctor says, well, it's your genes. There's nothing you can do with it. And I almost was livid because I'm the kind of person that believes that you are in charge of your destiny, whether it's physical body, your finances, or whatever else. So I never wanted him to think that we're victims of our genes. There's always something to do unless you get to a point you've exhausted all of your resources. And sometimes there's still something you can do. So that was the year what happened is also at the same time we ran into a college friend of his, and she was dying of cancer. And I hate seeing people suffering. So I went into a research mode to see what can we do to help her. So between his condition and me wanting to save his life because I didn't want to have an invalid for a husband. I mean, if somebody thinks, for better or worse, if it happens, it happens. But there was no way I was going to allow him to walk into it and me taking care of him. It sucks to be a primary caregiver. It just, let me tell you, it really sucks.
Yeah.
And then I also did not want to lose him. He's the love of my life, and then I didn't want to let him, go early in my life. The way he was going to die. So I went into this research mode, and I told our doctor that I'll come back within a year, and we'll have a solution. He was also about our age, young doctor. He's like, "There's no way, it's impossible. You can't do it." Basically, I said, "Whatever."
Good for you, Elena. I love it. I love it.
So we walked out, and I went into research mode. And Paul, at that time, I was reading an average of 3 to 5 hours a day of anything I can lay my hands on. Now, this is just onset of technology and internet, so there was not too much online. So you actually read books.
Yeah.
And I read, and it was just providence, luck, whatever you want to call it, fortune. I met somebody who mentioned the China study. I went and I got that book, and that became my nutritional Bible. I read every single word of it several times over. My husband said, "Sweetheart, whatever you tell me to do, I will do it. I just don't want to do all the reading. So you tell me, I'll do it." That was the easy way. We just actually had a podcast about it.
Wow. I bet many wives are jealous to have a husband who
I
says...
know. Well, we sat down, Paula, and we had this frank conversation. I said, here's how you're feeling. What do you want out of your life? Where do we want to go? We have business aspirations. We wanted to have kids. We wanted to have grandkids. I said, just imagine your life for me. I said, how do you think you want to look and feel like when you have great grandkids? And he said, I want to be able to run with them and be a fun guy. And I said, looking at your shape now, do you think you'll be that way? And he said, no. So I said, what are you willing to do for you to be what you imagine yourself to be? He said, whatever it takes. And that was the key word, and that was the key turning point for him. His why became so much bigger than his need for immediate satisfaction from food that it overshadowed any perceived sacrifice that he would have had to commit and commit to. And that was it for me. I said, okay. So overnight, I woke up, I cleared out all of our cupboards. And we had very little to eat. And I'm very creative in the kitchen, but all of a sudden I felt like the rug was pulled out from under me. And I started spending 3 hours a day researching recipes.
Elena, I'm so glad that you're saying this, because I think some people who are not vegan and they are kind of peeking over the wall towards veganism, they think, what am I going to eat? So I love that you had this very experience, but then I imagine you quickly found that, yes, of course, there are many things you can eat. So what happened?
We call it the aha moment. So I call it Oprah, this one, right? I looked at all these recipes, and some of them vegan, but they're lots of fat and lots of oils. So at that time, I still was not educated about the importance of having a low-fat diet.
Yeah.
So we're let's get better olive oil, but still fried foods and this was, I'm like, this makes no sense. So what I did is I had my aha moment. I said, if I take my favorite Russian food, Asian food, because I'm Central Asian, that's where I grew up. And if I just remove the animal products from them, what would I get? What I ended up with is this delicious, amazing, health-promoting foods that we went back to his doctor, and it was around December time. We said, take him off medication, we've gone vegan. And he said, this is dangerous. We said, you either do it with us, or we're going to find somebody else or do it without you. So he said, okay, we made a pact. 3 months, no meds, and if we come back, cholesterol is high, then you can put him back on. So for 3 months, it was pure they were squeaky clean, no treats, no anything. And again, still it was not as perfect as I know now.
Yeah.
We go back 3 months later, and his cholesterol went from 220 points to 176. And
Elena, you know what's so awesome about that? I probably would have said, I probably would have told the doctor to go jump in the lake and gone somewhere else. So yeah. I think it's so cool that you stayed with that doctor because you educated the doctor.
You would think that they want to get educated, Paul. Our history proves otherwise. Most doctors do not perceive that they can be educated. Now, I'm not talking about all the medical doctors that are nice and smart and you're part of BCRM and whatever else. I'm talking about doctors who have God complex. I have a medical degree. You, mere mortal, you know nothing what you're talking about.
Thank you.
Even at the same point, they have zero nutrition education. And so we went back to prove a point to ourselves, because after I researched all of this, I knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that it will work for us. But I am a science by nature. I have a physics major, so I love numbers. I love graphs. That's why made me such a good researcher, is that I wanted to have the beginning and the progression and the end point to compare to. So we went back and I read in the China study that optimal cholesterol level is under 150. So when we saw this 176, I said, well, great, we're on track. And so at this point, the doctor says, excuse me, he says, you no longer have to be on Zocor, that was his medication for cholesterol. And he says, you no longer really have to come and see me and keep doing what you're doing. And I said, doctor, do you want to know what we're doing? He said, no, that's fine. So that's the power of not wanting to be educated. You would think they would want to know so they can tell their other patients. So, but we told him, I said, doctor, we'll come to see you one more time. And I said, when we come back, his cholesterol will be at 150 or lower. And, you would have thought that the guy had learned his lesson. He didn't ask, like, you don't know what you're talking about. So went back home, kept doing what we're doing.
Can I ask you, Elena, before you continue, at this point where your husband was down to 170, was he already feeling better?
Oh, the pounds were melting off him. And if you are a guy, for guys to lose weight, it's like you sneeze and the weight is gone. For a woman, we really have to work at it because we're just cat-storing machines, because we have to have babies somehow, right? And so he was losing weight. He was feeling great. He was sleeping better. The chest pains were gone unless he ate something fatty or animal. So he was like, I want some cheese, and bam, a chest pain.
What is more obvious than that? He eats the thing and then immediately angina or whatever. Thank you.
Yeah.
So go ahead and
almost immediate reaction. He learned very quickly that, and I actually love that part of his body that even now, if he eats anything fatty, 9 years almost into it, he'll have a chest pain. So like his body is protecting him from being foolish. Yeah. And so, high sugar, high fat, high animal products, those three ways, or stress, that would do it to him at that time. Now it would be anything that is high fat or sugar that will give him chest pain. And he knows it. So he really very rarely will have a treat. But his body protected him that way, and I was grateful for it.
Okay. Now, of course, it sounds like your primary motivation for all this transition was just to save your husband's life, which is so awesome that you did. But, of course, you also were personally following these changes. So did you start to experience benefits as well?
Well, so for me, I'm going to finish off with your permission the husband story.
Yes.
So we went back 6 months after that last appointment, and because I made a promise to my doctor that my husband's cholesterol would be 150 or lower, here's the fun part: it was 149.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
I got my husband fixed. I got his health fixed, and he was just sailing along, doing great. And I looked at my body, and I was still in birth control at that time. So I was doing better. I was losing weight, but I was not great because my body was still screwed up by hormones outside of my body. So when we got this report that you're doing great now, it's 149, and mind you, I lost about 28 pounds by that point. So I'm making progress. Of course, I'm doing better, but I'm not great because I had signs and symptoms of hypothyroidism, but nobody would diagnose me. So again, internet happens. There's a lot of information start popping up. So I kind of self-diagnosed, and then I look for a doctor who would confirm my self-diagnosis. So I don't go to doctors a lot of times to get treated. I go for diagnosis. I have to be smart that way because they are trained in medicine, and we have to utilize whatever tools they have. So they might not be trained in nutrition, but if right now I have to choose between dying and taking medication, you bet I'll take medication just to survive until I can figure out what to do naturally, right?
I love that. I love that, Elena, because a lot of folks get so fanatical about going natural, and they get so angry, and perhaps justifiably, with the traditional medical paradigm, that they just totally throw it out. But I like what you're saying. There are practical times where you can avail yourself of medical help. Yeah.
I always say that I cannot sell too many books because I don't preach extremes. And it's usually people who teach the extremes, they sell a lot of copies of whatever next diet they're teaching. Yeah. I'm the one that says use common sense, use whatever tools you have to stay alive and to get better. And then we'll figure out the rest as we're going.
Beautiful.
So that's what I did for myself. I found a doctor and I went in. And that's when I got the diagnosis of pituitary adenoma, meaning there's a tumor on my pituitary gland. And I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism. Mind you, I was much worse, but improving by that time. So my hypothyroidism was much worse before plant-based, but it was improving even on birth control until I could not improve it anymore because there was this stumbling block. And so it was the year that we decided we want to conceive, we want to have a baby, let's do this. And I get off birth control and nothing happens. I'm like, God, what's going on? We want a baby. And, I always say there's a drug addict on the street. She doesn't want a kid and she gets pregnant and no problem. And here I am. We're good people trying the right things, taking care of ourselves. So I get the diagnosis and the doctor tells me here are 2 prescriptions, one for your thyroid, one for your pituitary. And if you ever want to get pregnant, you're going to have to be on them. One for hypothyroidism for the rest of your life, because you cannot fix your thyroid, and for pituitary just until you get pregnant, then we'll work with it. And that was January of 2008, and I will never forget the day because I felt like a cattle being led to slaughter. I was rushed into a cold office, and it was a room, and I put a gown on because they did an ultrasound of my ovaries to check out everything. So without any apologies or warming up, doctor comes in, pokes and prods at me, it's like emotional pain and emotional humiliation to start with physically.
Yeah.
And then you rushed into a cold office where you wait for like an hour for the good doctor to come in and give the results. He comes in without any emotion, and here's your sentence, you live with it. He's done and out of the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, dude, and I'm trying to have a conversation with him saying, well, this is what worked for my husband. I'm going to employ the same things to heal myself. He's like, there's no way you can't do it. So I walked out of that office. My husband came with me. We sat in the car for like a half hour. I had a good, boohoo, ugly cry. And I said, if it takes me for the rest of my life, I'm going to prove him wrong. And I'm going to have it my way or I'm going to die. This is it. That was the day I made the decision that there is no science to it. I'm going to create that science that will prove this is possible.
Wow.
I was fed up, and that became the mission of my life. And I got off birth control. We learned the natural family planning method to get pregnant, not to avoid pregnancy. And it didn't work for us because I had pituitary diagnosis. That's a slightly different story we can get into later. But here's what happened with my thyroid. The same year we moved from Ohio to Washington. And I got tested within 6 months, and my thyroid TSH went from, it was almost 5.0 when I got tested by the diagnosing doctor. And by the time I got tested half a year later or so, it was like a 2.5, 2.5.
Okay, let me ask you, Elena, how long had you been plant-based until this time?
So until this time, we were plant-based for almost a year. But mind you, plant-based is great, but when you're on birth control, it negates a lot of your efforts.
Okay.
And it was not even perfect plant-based because we're still using oils. We were not as educated. So I was going through this odyssey of learning.
Yeah.
And
so it was about a year of high-fat plant-based.
It was not high fat as American high fat, but still was not low fat. So it was like moderate fat, but still was not optimal.
Okay.
So yeah, it was not perfect, but it was good enough. I lost weight, and then we moved to the state of Washington. And I go from my starting sick weight. So I used to be 125 pounds. I went to 168 pounds. And then by the time we're in Washington, within a year, I go down to 120 pounds frame. Wow. So things were working very quickly for me. Once I got off birth control, what happens with birth control besides just hijacking your hormones, It causes water retention a lot of times, and a lot of my weight, about 10, 15 pounds, came out through urine because of water retention.
Wow.
So once I quit birth control, that helped me, and so my thyroid started functioning better almost immediately after I quit birth control.
Okay, now can you clarify for me? I'm kind of ignorant here. These measurements for the thyroid.
Sure.
What exactly does that? What is a 2.5? What does that mean?
Yeah, so the TSH that does the hormone measuring lab that we take when we take thyroid. There's also T3 and T4. Those are hormones how our thyroid operates. So the major one we go is kind of like cholesterol has an overall number. We go by TSH overall number. The higher the number, the more sluggish your thyroid is.
Okay.
The lower the number, the more overactive your thyroid is. So the perfect number is between like 0.8 to 1.5 and 2. That's like small range right there.
Okay.
So I went from 5, and it was probably much higher like the year before I started plant-based diet. But so by the time I finally get diagnosis, it's still at 5. It's still elevated. And within like less than half a year went down to 2.5. By the next year, it was at 1.6, I think. And
so you stopped birth control, and your numbers dropped by half towards a healthy range.
Still not healthy range.
Yeah. And
so
then
when my thyroid was not sluggish anymore, it was suddenly kicked up and was acting the way it was supposed to.
Okay. And were you still taking this pituitary medication, or had you dropped that?
I never got on medication.
Okay.
I got the 2 prescriptions, and I said I'm going to one day put them in a book or in a memory book, at least if I don't ever write a book. And I did. I still have it in my file. One day I'm going to write my book, and it's going to be there. Because I never went on medication. Now I will have to talk about pituitary a little bit later, but I healed my thyroid. I was perfect weight. I felt great, but I was still a little depressed because pituitary. The fact that I couldn't get pregnant could get you depressed enough, right? But my pituitary disorder was still, so it caused my prolactin levels to be elevated, which means I was lactating and I never had a baby.
Interesting.
But here's what the thing I told you. Birth control inserts don't tell you the whole truth. I went into research mode and I found out that taking birth control can cause for prolactin levels to get elevated. And a lot of women end up with the same diagnosis as I did, pituitary abnormality. And there's no freaking way to go back and fix it because it destroys the pituitary.
Yeah.
So at that point, I became passionate. I did a whole series on anti-birth control theme, and I got a lot of women out birth control because we end up, it's one of those things that is well hidden. It's not mentioned until you find some court cases, which I did find, where there was some legal action against companies, producing them, pharmaceutical companies. That's how I found out that and I never had a pituitary problem until after I went on very strong birth control.
Let me ask you, this is just my basic, like, high school memory, but is it accurate to say that the pituitary, the primary function of it is to regulate the whole hormonal system? So wouldn't it make sense that if you do something to one of these lesser glands, if you will, like the thyroid or maybe the ovaries, let's say you introduce some hormone in the system that makes them work overtime or replaces their efforts, isn't it logical to assume that it's going to affect the feedback with the pituitary and mess up the controls of the pituitary?
It would be so logical, but here's the deal. A lot of us, I was young, I was illogical, and in the beginning we thought, well, we don't want to have a kid right away, so let's be logical. And my doctor told me you want to, control your hypothyroidism or have menstrual cycles.
Yes.
Well, stupid. We had to argue over her with, about pap smears and everything else. But stupid me, I never questioned that.
Well, I'm not saying you. I think the whole.
No, me too.
Yeah.
I don't think we can cure a problem unless we admit that we're part of the problem. I was stupid, Paul. I was ignorant. I'm willing to take responsibility for all the hell that happened to me. I can blame the pharmaceuticals. I can blame my doctors, but nobody forced me to take any medication.
All right. Amen. I love it. All right.
I don't work with my clients until they are ready to fess up that they're part of the problem, all there is to it, because part of any healing process is to say, I am a part of what created my disaster.
Beautiful.
And
Okay.
I think Jack Canfield, the author of the Chicken Soup for Soul, I think, he has the success book now published, and he has a formula that event plus response equals your outcome. So yes, hell happened to me, but my response in the process was to first say yes to my demise, and I was reaping the poor health benefits. Eventually, the hell was happening to me, but I said, I'm going to take charge of this sucker, and my outcome all of a sudden became different. So
Fantastic.
I reversed hypothyroidism. So when I was starting this process, it just the infancy of internet, and when you Googled or just searched at that time, Yahoo, anything like curing hypothyroidism or reversing, that was not even term used there. I was one of the first on the internet to claim reverse hypothyroidism term, and now you see it now we say cure hypothyroidism. And mind you, even people in my industry, in the plant-based industry, don't still believe that you can cure a hypothyroidism problem, where I disagree with it, and I think it depends. If you have hypothyroidism for 20-some years of your life and your thyroid is completely shut down and you've been on medication, so yeah, maybe we cannot cure it, but we can improve your function still, and you can still feel better. But if you've just been diagnosed, if it just happened, over 60% of my clients completely cure the problem.
Yeah, this is a huge point, Elena. There's a quote that Dr. McDougall says, which is 80% of all disease can be treated through nutritional, the proper diet. And what I would like to add to that is that these remaining diseases, like the ones you're indicating, where the system has been so screwed up that it no longer functions properly, even those diseases, which may not be directly affected by a vegan, plant-based, low-fat diet, they're still going to be creating, that diet is still going to be creating the best conditions to treat those diseases. Yeah.
Absolutely. When your car needs an oil change, if you don't get an oil change, something's going to break down. Besides, it's going to be your engine, something else. It's going to be domino effect. I love the book that was written by Colin Campbell. It's called Whole, W-H-O-L-E.
Yeah.
And he talks about that medicine, the medical field treats all of the diseases in isolation. Yeah. Oh, you have a hypothyroidism problem, let's give you medication for thyroid. You have a heart problem, let's give you this. We don't ever look at the whole person. And we are a network of cells. We're a network of glands. We're a network of body organs. None of them ever work in isolation. None is in this vacuum saying, oh, you treat me and I'm just fine. You treat one part of your body, the rest of your body can benefit from it. So my thyroid started functioning better. I was able to lose weight. And as I lost weight, I slept better. And as I slept better, I was more rested. And as I was more rested, I can go on and on and on. So it comes to a point that there are cases. So with my pituitary, it never became fully resolved because I've tried everything, all natural means, and I'm still trying. So while I never took any medication for the first, 2010, I don't know, first like 4 years when I was doing my research, I didn't take medication. And eventually I got to points like, I want a baby. I'm in my mid-30s. I need a child because I still want to be a young mother, right? And against all of the cries on my heart, I said, okay, I'm tired of research. I've researched for like 5 years. I just needed a mental break. And I went and I got medication for pituitary. And mind you, by that time we relocated back to Ohio, and I went to the same doctor who diagnosed me, and he sees me, he sees my lab results, and he is floored. Like, it's impossible to cure hypothyroidism, and here you are, it's 1.4. And I said, well, this is what I did. I said, if you want to tell your clients, he's like, no, thanks.
That is so frustrating. I'm so frustrating because that's like suppressing the truth.
It is. My thing is to permit is to participate. So if somebody permits for disease to happen while they have information, they're participating and being the problem.
Yes.
Not all doctors are that way. So you can be selective in choosing doctor, and that is the blessing of living in America. You can fire your doctor.
Yeah.
So what doctors?
Yeah, and I think it's good, which you alluded to earlier. There are conscientious doctors, and there are doctors who get educated in nutrition now, and we do have a few doctors who know these things. But
I'm about to tell you about one that blew me out of the water. But you have to. You are the power that pays their bills. You don't bring your health insurance or your cash to them; they don't get paid. So as Americans, what we need to learn is we tell our doctors to get educated and how to get educated. They don't want to do it, hit the road. I don't care if I have to pay out of the pocket. We are not bound to our doctors. And poor doctors, bad doctors, here's the problem. You can become a doctor even if you're an average C student. You still get your medical license.
Yeah.
And you can get crappy doctor giving crappy advice. And excuse my language, please, but I get fed up with that. But
yeah,
then you have
I mean, I even think there are lots of doctors who want to become doctors for altruistic reasons. They want to help people.
Right.
And then they get into a system that is funded by vested interests like pharmaceutical industry. There's like tradition, there's culture, there's these forces that obstruct their will to help people. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, so I fired my doctor. That was the last time I ever went to see him. I did take that medication, but here's what happened. I was a fitness trainer at that time, and I needed to be up and going, and I need to be up and rested, all of that. That medication, within 2 days, I was an insomniac. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't breathe. I was teaching a fitness class. I could barely move. It put me in a bad place, and it induced hypothyroidism in me.
Wow.
In spite of my perfect diet.
Yeah.
So 6 months into it, I said, and I still was not pregnant. I said, it's not worth it. And I came to my husband and said, and I said, honey, if I never conceive, I just can't go on this way. I just can't. And so we decided that we're just going to get off of it. I needed time to heal. I needed time to heal my thyroid again. And so one night, I was still battling insomnia. I went into research mode. I made a list of everything that I still had, all of the symptoms. And I looked for one common denominator, what could possibly cause it. And one thing, and there's very little research even to this day on it, I found that there's a connection between infertility and B12 deficiency and other symptoms that I was having. And that was my aha moment. As you go vegan, you get educated that you should be taking your B12. But our recommended value is like you need about 4 micrograms a day. So if you took like 250 micrograms, you think that you're set for the next 2 years, right? Well, that's not the case. The study that brings recommendation of 4 micrograms a day was done on 8 people. And there's almost like freaking 7 billion people in the world, and 8 people studied how did they arrive to this? So I had B12 in my cupboard, and the same night I went and I took like a handful. By the morning, I was feeling better.
Wow.
And I think some of it could have been a placebo effect because it's like I found the truth, and I admit to it. I would never, I'd never say this was the healing point for me.
Now let me clarify, Elena. So prior to this, you had been taking 250 micrograms once a week, once a month, once a year?
Once, twice a week, whatever, because I knew I was like, cool, it's only 4 micrograms, plus if I drink almond milk, it's in there too. And you are not prepared, and that's why eventually I created a program that teaches people everything step by step of how to become vegan in a healthy way. So I was like, okay, I need to stop, and I need to find a doctor, I need to get tested. And there is a book that is written, it's called Could It Be B12, a great book about this topic. It was not written by a vegan by any means. She's a omnivore. And there's actually a movie that came out about it. So I get her book, I do my research, and I found only 2 studies that were ever done on fertility and B12 deficiency. And both of them had a positive outcome when a woman was put on B12 supplementation.
Interesting.
I get everything done, and here's what you do when you need to find a doctor. Here's how everybody should be doing it. I get on the phone, I pull up a list of doctors within my network, and I interview them on the phone. Here's how I do it. I call and say, may I speak with your doctor for 5 minutes? I need to know if we're the right fit. If the doctor never returns your call or is not willing to get on the phone, he's not the doctor for you.
Love it. I love that. So
I eventually find an osteopath. An osteopath is a cross between a naturopath and a medical doctor. They're trained in both. And this amazing guy, he lives in Ohio, in Dublin, he practices. His name is Chris Osborne. He calls me back, and I tell him, here's my problem. I'm vegan. I'm not going to compromise. I'm not going off of a vegan diet because I'm not, by this point, I'm not only a health vegan, I'm a compassionate vegan. I don't want to eat animals. And I'm not going to increase my fat intake. By that time, we're already low-fat vegans. And I'm telling him all that. I said, will you work with me? And here's the reason I would come to see you if you see me. He said, come and see me. I was like, this is my doctor. I knew that this is my doctor. I went, and my husband made fun of me. He came to me for the first appointment with me. I had my research, my printout, my book, everything was highlighted. And I was there basically to tell him, here's the test I want, and your doctor should work with that. And here's the treatment I want. And here's where my doctor had my heart. I said, think me crazy, think me, type A, taking over your life, whatever. I've done this battle for about 6 years by now. I'm ready to make this change. I know what I'm talking about. And he said, can I please copy your research?
Say again. Can I
please copy your research?
Thank you. Doctors should be so happy to see people like you who are taking a responsible role in their own health. I mean, that's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah, he said something that really I use to this day. He said, I specialize in medicine, in all of it. And he said, you specialize in your condition.
I love it. Yeah. That's beautiful.
I specialize in hypothyroidism. I do specialize in hormone imbalances. This is what I know. This is what I've spent, my goodness, by now probably like 20,000 hours researching. That's what I do. So he had my heart at, can I copy your research?
All right. Listen, Elena, this story is so awesome. Now, I got to go. I have to be somewhere. But we're going to do, if you're willing, we got to do part 2 because I got a million more questions I got to ask you.
We didn't talk about the diet yet, right?
But it's a great story, and I knew this story would be awesome. So, listen, let's get in touch about another time where we can continue this. And,
yeah, we can do next Saturday. Usually Saturday is an easy day for me because my husband. So.
Okay, beautiful. Elena, real pleasure, and thank you so much. Beautiful. And I guess why don't I close here with you saying where people can access your website and any links that you want to give them.
Sure. You can find me, and this is where I live and play, Vegalicious, and unfortunately the Vegalicious.com was taken, and somebody is holding it hostage for sale. So I hyphenated. It's vega-licious.com. So it's vega-licious.com. Or if you just Google Elena Wilkins, E-L-E-N-A, let me see if I can spell my name, Wilkins, with all I's in it, I will pop up. I'm everywhere. Or if you Google pure hypothyroidism, I will pop up the first person at the top of the page. But I do teach people how to do vegan right. And my thing is, we need to tell people how to do it right from the get-go, what to take, what to avoid, how not to listen to nonsense, and how not to fall prey to the stupid fad diets out there.
Beautiful.
Because we want to make this life sustainable. So
yeah,
vega-licious.com.
Yeah, and we're gonna go over all this in our part 2. So okay. we're gonna finish your story, which is after.
There's only a little bit left to it.
Yeah, miraculously finding a doctor who would work with you. We'll finish that part. And then I also want to get into your take on various vitamins and minerals, what's needed, what's not needed, quantities, your take on ethics, environment, and any other things you want to discuss. So, Elena, thank you so much for your work, and I look forward to talking to you again.